Look at the centre of this painting. A vast, pale human head, eyes like empty windows, trees growing from its ears, and from its nose a slow stream of gold coins falling into a tub where naked figures bathe. For more than 500 years, people have stood in front of this face and asked the same question. What is it? And here is the strange part. The art historians, the museum experts, the scholars who have spent their lives with this panel, they cannot agree either. Some say it is the devil. Some say it is greed itself, made into flesh. Some believe it is a monster named in an ancient story, a beast that devours the wealthy. Nobody knows. But the deeper mystery isn't what the face is. The deeper mystery is why it is a face at all. Because the story this painting is based on never described a head. It described something else entirely. And once you understand what the painter chose to leave out and what he chose to put in its place, this quiet little panel becomes one of the most unsettling images in all of medieval art. This panel hangs today in Madrid, in the Museo Lázaro Galdiano. It is small, barely the size of a tabletop, painted in oil on oak, and it comes from the world of Hieronymus Bosch, the Netherlandish master of nightmares. For centuries it was called a work by Bosch himself. Today, most experts believe it came from his workshop, a painter so close to the master that the two hands are almost impossible to tell apart. And yet, the museum's own study of the wood places the panel within Bosch's lifetime, and does not entirely rule out that the master touched it. So even the authorship is unsettled, but the subject that we know for certain. Because down in the lower left corner, almost hidden, there is a small inscription in Gothic letters, Vision of Tondal, the Vision of Tondal. And beside those words, a man asleep. A knight, slumped and unconscious, watched over by an angel who lifts a hand and points toward everything else. Look, the angel seems to say, this is what you need to see. So who was Tondal? And what is the angel showing him? The story is older than the painting, much older. Around the year 1149, in a monastery in Regensburg, in Germany, an Irish monk named Marcus wrote down an account he claimed to have heard from a knight's own lips. The knight's name was Tondal, and by every account he was not a good man, wealthy, arrogant, living entirely for pleasure, indifferent to the harm he caused. Then one evening, at a feast, he collapsed. For 3 days his body lay as if dead, and during those 3 days the story says his soul was taken by an angel and led down, through hell. This wasn't a quiet tour. Tondal watched sinners boiled, frozen, torn apart. Every sin had its own place, every vice its own punishment. But watching was only the beginning. Because as the journey went deeper, the angel stopped letting Tondal observe the torments and started making him endure them. He was chopped apart by demons, devoured, burned, then frozen, and then restored, whole again, only to suffer it all a second time. When Tondal finally woke 3 days later, he was a different man. He gave away his fortune. He spent the rest of his life in penance. It became one of the most famous stories in all of medieval Europe, copied into more than 170 manuscripts, translated into 15 languages. This wasn't entertainment, this was a warning. A tool priests use to make one truth feel absolutely real, that sin has consequences you cannot escape. And the painter has spread that entire journey across a single panel. Now, look again, and this time, look closely, because every corner of this painting is a punishment. The coins falling from the great head's nose into the tub of bathers, this is greed. Wealth pouring out of the body, endlessly, pooling into a bath of the covetous. Here a man seated on a single die, tormented by demons, a life gambled away on chance. Here a demon forcing a woman to stare into a mirror, vanity, the sin of loving your own reflection. And here, perched on the head, an owl. We think of the owl as wise, but in Bosch's world, The owl is the opposite, a creature of spiritual darkness, evil that watches, silently, from the shadows, without ever being seen. Even in the corners, the horror continues, a woman asleep in a curtained bed, small creatures crawling over her body, a nightmare feast held inside a barrel. The whole painting is a catalogue of everything a medieval Christian was taught to fear. But now return to the great head at the centre, because here is where the mystery sharpens. In the original story, the punishment for greed is guarded by a monster, not a header beast, a creature the size of a mountain, called Acheron, that swallows the covetous whole. In the most famous illustrated version of the tale, painted for a duchess, the artist showed it exactly that way. An enormous, gaping animal, its jaws propped open, devouring the damned. That was the accepted image. That is what the painter would have known, and he chose not to paint it. Instead of a beast, he gave us a face, a human face. This was not a mistake, it was a decision. The painter looked at a story about a monster that devours the greedy and replaced the monster with something far more disturbing, something that looks like us. And then there is one more detail, one that almost everyone walks past. Return to the knight in the corner. In other versions of this scene, Tondal stands upright, naked, a soul stripped bare, watching hell from the outside, but not here. Here he is fully clothed, and he is asleep. Which means the angel is not pointing at a place Tondal has travelled to. The angel is pointing at a dream. All of it, the coins, the fire, the mirror, the owl, the entire inferno is unfolding inside the mind of a sleeping man. And at the centre of that dream sits a giant human head. This is where the painting stops being about a knight from Ireland and starts being about you. Read this way, and this is interpretation now, not certainty. The human face is not the devil arriving from somewhere far away. It is hell wearing the only face it ever truly needs. Because the deepest fear this painting carries is not that a monster is waiting for us below. It is that the monster is already inside. The greed, the vanity, the cold indifference, they don't come from the pit. They come from the human heart. And so, the painter did the boldest thing he could. He took hell and gave it a human face. And yet, look one last time at the corner, at the sleeping man, at the angel beside him, patient, waiting. Because Tondal is only asleep. In the story, he wakes, he is horrified, and he changes everything. The suffering he saw was never meant to be the end of him. It was meant to be a warning he could still answer. The angel, in the old text, tells Tondal something quietly staggering, that everything he endured was merciful, compared to what he truly deserved. That is the strange grace hidden inside this terrifying little panel. The horror is real. But so is the open door. The face of hell may be human, but so is the face that wakes up and chooses differently. And still, the painting keeps its secrets. That owl, watching from the head in Bosch's work, it appears again and again, and no one has ever fully explained what it is guarding. The great head itself has never been given a name that scholars agree on, and somewhere out there are other versions of this same vision painted by other hands, in other cities, each one showing hell a little differently, each one, perhaps, hiding a story of its own. But those are journeys for another day. For now, look once more at the face at the centre, and ask yourself the question no one has answered in 500 years. What is it really? If you'd like to uncover the next one, comment next part